This is my chemistry blog summary video. So I'm going to summarize all of the things that I learned doing my blog. So my first driving question was, what happens in my brain when I listen to music and why? One of the first things that I looked at for my blog was the areas of the brain that are triggered when listening to music. One of the areas is the nuclear accumbens. This is responsible for pleasure, reward, and addiction. Another section of the brain that's active during playing music and listening to music is the amygdala. This section of the brain is responsible for emotion and decision making. The interesting thing that researchers found while doing this project was that music not only triggers the emotional part of your brain, but also the intellectual. Their theory is that we enjoy music because when we subconsciously predict what's going to happen next in the music and we get it right, a reward is released in our brain, and that makes us happy. So kind of like the simpler music is easier to predict, and that's why a lot of people who aren't as familiar with more complex genres of music might like rap and pop, because it's easier to predict, and that's when the reward is triggered in their brain. The way that scientists found this information is using two tools called PET scans and fMRIs. These basically take live action pictures of your brain, and they had patients go into PET scans and fMRIs while they were listening to or playing music. When patients were listening to music, the scientists saw areas of their brain active that were in charge of problem solving, emotions, and creativity. But when patients were actually playing or singing music, their entire brain lit up. It's been proven that playing music not only activates the entire brain, but strengthens areas throughout the entire brain. The corpus callosum connects both halves of your brain, your right half and your left half. It's very important to problem solving, creative thinking, planning, and things like that. When you play music, it activates fine motor skills, which is connection between what your body is doing and what your brain wants your body to do type thing. The corpus callosum is strengthened through fine motor skills, which is why it's been proven that musicians have better problem-solving skills, more creative thinking, better planning skills, more attention to detail, and overall do better in school than students who don't play a musical instrument. The next point that I covered in my blog was about neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are basically what allows brain cells to communicate between hand or the rest of your body and your brain. It's kind of an interneuron message system. Oh, and a neuron is just a cell that specializes in transmitting messages from the body to the brain and vice versa. So we looked at what areas of the brain are activated, and one of those was the reward system in your brain. But why does the reward system activate during music? It's because of something called a chemical called dopamine. Dopamine is produced in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is also the decision-making part of your brain. When you get chills listening to music, it's because of a dopamine release. Not after you correctly guess what's going to happen, necessarily, but even when what you thought was going to happen, well, the actual thing is better than that. So it can go both ways. You can have a release of dopamine when you correctly subconsciously guess what's going to happen next in the music, or when you're guessing that one thing's going to happen, but something even better happens in the music. Dopamine doesn't just have to do with rewards, though. It has to do with movement, rewards, addictions, memory, attention, and cognition, and social function. There are a lot of diseases that can come from either too much dopamine or not enough dopamine. And some of these are Parkinson's disease and also depression. What scientists have been doing for the last 10 years or so is providing dopamine supplements, which is basically drugs that send more dopamine into your brain just directly, in hopes of raising levels of dopamine to cure depression and Parkinson's disease. But a theory that I had while doing this blog was maybe we're going in the wrong direction and we need to try more natural ways of bringing dopamine to the brain, like music. Can music cure depression? Remains to be seen. Okay, so that was kind of my first half of the blog. My second driving question was, how is sound physically and chemically produced and heard? So I started off with how we talk and sing. All sound that we say or sing comes from the larynx. The larynx is inside your throat. It's what people often call the voice box. It contains your vocal cords, which is basically what makes sound. Your vocal cords are they're not muscles. They're actually thin pieces of tissue or skin. It's two, like one and then two, and they're inside your throat like this. And when you push air through, they vibrate and they hit against each other. And that's what makes the actual sound. When you're just breathing like this and not actually talking, your vocal cords are open. When you're actually talking or singing, they're like this, and the air comes through like, and it like opens the vocal cords at different frequencies, which we'll talk about next. The nerve that controls the opening and closing of the vocal cords is known as the vagus nerve. So then I went into sound itself. What sound is, essentially, is a disturbance or vibration that sends a wave through a medium. A medium is any substance that a wave can travel through. So a medium for sound can be anything that's fluid, but in this case we're usually talking about air because sound waves just travel through the air. Frequency is how often particles in a medium vibrate when the wave passes through them. Frequency is measured in a unit called the hertz. 1 hertz equals 1 vibration per second. So if something was only 1 hertz, it would only be vibrating once per second. So your vocal cords would be going 1, 1, 1. But that's not usually how it works. Most sound vibrates at between 500 and 15,000 hertz. So imagine your vocal cords vibrating 15,000 times per second. The human ear can hear sound between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz. Sound that we can't hear is known as infrasound or ultrasound. Infrasound is sound waves below what the human ear can hear, and ultrasound is above what we can hear. Different kinds of animals, like dogs and cats, can hear frequencies that are above what we can hear, and dolphins and bats, which communicate by just vibrations, not actually sound, can hear upwards of 100,000 hertz, which is crazy. We would never be able to hear that. It would be like an extremely high pitch. Oh, I was going to talk about frequency is what we call pitch. So in music, different pitches are played together and they're known as either consonant or dissonant. Consonant pitches are two pitches that sound good together, make a pleasant sound, and dissonant is two pitches that don't make a good sound. So it has all about to do with the ratio. So an octave is two pitches with a frequency ratio of 2 to 1. For example, 256 hertz and 512 hertz. A third has a ratio of 5 to 4. For example, 256 hertz and 320 hertz. A fourth, 4 to 3. And a fifth is 3 to 2. Then the last part of my blog that I talked about was how we actually perceive sound. So, our ears. The ear is divided into 3 different parts. The outer ear, middle ear, and the inner ear. The outer ear is the part of your ear that you can actually see. This part, it's called either the pinna or the auricle. This part of your ear's job is just to catch the sound waves and bring them in through your middle ear through your outer ear into your middle ear and then into your middle and then inner. Sorry. Then your middle ear is the part of your ear that contains your eardrum and also ossicles. Ossicles are the smallest bones in your body. Your ossicles are your malleus, your incus, and your stapes. And what happens is the sound wave comes in through your outer ear, and then it hits your eardrum, and your eardrum vibrates. And then your eardrum is over here vibrating, and then your ossicles start to move, and they kind of activate each other like levers. Like the malleus moves the incus, and then the incus moves the stapes. And then the stapes hits a tube in your inner ear called the cochlea. The cochlea is filled with liquid, nerves, and tiny hairs, and it's kind of like a tube that's shaped like a spirally. When your ossicles hit the cochlea, the liquid is set into motion, kind of like a wave, and the little hairs vibrate, and those messages are actually sent to your brain, and you perceive it as sound. So essentially that is how you hear music. So, yeah. Thanks for watching.